I meant it when I wrote it because
Okay, but you don't mean it now?
I do not mean it now.
So if you
Right
take
now.
off your advocate hat today, do you have your advocate hat on today?
I am no longer an advocate. I'm a sitting magistrate
Okay,
judge.
so you don't tell the truth when you're an advocate, but you do when you're not? Is it okay to lie if you're an advocate?
I don't follow the question.
I think it's pretty clear, and I think you follow it. You've taken a lot of radical positions, Judge.
Welcome back to American Mindset, where we bring you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth from a patriotic perspective. If you're tired of the left-wing media spin, then you're in the right place. Today, folks, we're diving into an explosive Senate hearing where Senator John Kennedy absolutely dismantles the radical positions of a judicial nominee. Grab your coffee, grab your flag, and let's watch the video.
Thank you.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, congratulations. Judge Cheeks, I see you're quite a prolific writer, and you say I heard you answer Senator Durbin's question, you said you don't take a position in these articles?
I said I tried not to take a position in most of my articles.
Well, you didn't succeed. In October 2020, you published an article entitled, "I Can't Breathe." You remember that article?
I do remember that article.
Okay. You were talking about Mr. George Floyd's tragic death. Here's what you said, quote, your words, not mine, quote, "What happened next after Mr. Floyd's death is nothing short of amazing. Mostly peaceful protest broke out almost immediately in Minneapolis, and the use of excessive force by police officers became the villain in a sea of protesters," end quote. Did I read that accurately?
That sounds correct, yes, Senator.
All right, and then in October of 2019, you wrote an article entitled "Raising Responsibility: A Concerned Parent's Perspective." You remember that?
I do remember that, yes.
Did you take a position in that article?
I recall my position being talking about how am I going to address issues with my
So
children.
you did take positions, unlike what you told Senator Durbin.
What I told Senator Durbin that I try not to take positions.
Okay. Well, I want to read you from your article. Quote, your words, not mine. "Needless to say, I have a guarded opinion about the police. How do I teach my sons to respect them and fear them at the same time? There can be no question that police officers have some of these same internal or external biases." Let me repeat that. There can be no question that police officers, not some, all police officers have some of these same internal or external biases described above. Do some of them view black males differently than others? I think so. Sounds like a position to me. Do some think black males are more dangerous than others? I think so. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you read that correctly.
All right, now, and then in May of 2019, you remember writing an article for a publication, the title of the article, the title of your article in which you say you didn't take a position was called "The Federal Dungeon Part 2, Court Proceedings." You remember that?
I do.
Okay. And you were talking about, it was then under President Trump, not President Biden. The Department of Justice then had a zero tolerance for illegal entry into the United States, because that, of course, is the law. And this is what you said about that. Quote, "Technically, the law was broken, but these particular defendants, poor, hungry, hardworking, and not dangerous, deserve a pass from prosecution." End quote. Saying that illegal immigration should not be criminalized as a position, is it not?
It is. What I'd like to add is that everything that I wrote while I was an advocate, not a sitting judge.
Oh, I see. That
I
makes
was-
a difference. Did you mean it when you wrote it?
When I wrote it,
Did you mean it?
I meant it when I wrote it because
Okay, but you don't mean it now?
I do not mean it now.
So if you
right
take
now.
off your advocate hat today, do you have your advocate hat on today?
I am no longer an advocate. I'm a sitting magistrate
Okay,
judge.
so so you don't tell the truth when you're an advocate, but you do when you're not? Is it okay to lie if you're an advocate?
I don't follow the question.
I think it's pretty clear, and I think you follow it. You've taken a lot of radical positions, Judge, and you can't make this catwalk backwards. Now, you can't make this catwalk backwards. I have one question for our second judge here. Judge, you remember a couple years ago going on a broadcast called Visible Voices Podcast? All right. Here's what you said. It was just a couple years ago. So we're not talking way back in law school or anything. We're talking about a couple years. You'd been on the bench how long? 8 years then?
I've been on the bench almost 10.
Yeah. Well, but when you said this in front of God and country, you'd been on the bench 8. You said it in January 31, 2022. Here's what you said, quote, "I think that COVID has brought a lot of these issues to bear, especially in the legal profession, where I tell a lot of people all the time, we, the people, never included people of color or women. When you have an institution that is set up by property-owning white men for 200 years or so, it wasn't geared towards thinking about what would be the best work schedule or how we could really incorporate women with children in this field. So it's been a challenge that COVID was exacerbated," end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, Senator, you did.
And then you go on later in the podcast to call for quotas based on gender, don't you?
No, sorry, never,
Yes, you
ever
do.
claimed
If the
anything
senator
about
will give
quotas.
me time, I'll read what you said. May I finish reading what you said? The witnesses denied believing in quotas based on gender, and I have the quote.
Senator, you may read the quote, and then she will give an opportunity to
Okay,
respond.
here's your quote, Judge. Your words, not mine. Quote, "I think recognizing implicit bias is really important." Me too. "But I'll be honest, I don't think that's enough. Because the truth of the matter is nobody is going to voluntarily give up their position in favor of women. Women have to demand it. Women have to be willing to require and hold people accountable, hold men who are in those positions accountable, and say, quote, why don't we have an equal number of supervising judges, close quote." You didn't tell me the truth, did you? You believe in quotas based on gender, don't you?
Senator, your time's expired. I'd let the witness respond.
Thank you. No, I have never advocated on behalf of quotas. I think it's undisputed
Well,
that
what
at the
was
time,
this?
Please.
I just read it.
I
continue
think
your
at the time that the Constitution was written, there is no question that it did not include women, and it did not include people of color in the definition of we the people. We, as women and people of color, have only recently been able to be judges or jurors or politicians. But the systems that were created when I was excluded and when people of color were excluded continue. All I was commenting upon is that the diversity in the judiciary builds integrity in the system and public confidence in those institutions. I never mentioned anything about quota. Thank you.
Good try, Judge.
Senator Butler?
Good try. Good try.
Did y'all hear that? Senator Kennedy is quoting Judge Cheek's own words, and she's trying to wiggle her way out of it. Let's break this down piece by piece, because what we're hearing here is a masterclass in accountability, and a clear example of why we need to protect our institutions from radical ideologues. Let's start with her article, "I Can't Breathe," written after the tragic death of George Floyd. She called the protests that followed mostly peaceful. Mostly peaceful? Really? Tell that to the business owners whose stores were looted, or the families of people who lost their lives in those so-called peaceful protests. Senator Kennedy was right to highlight this. It's not just about her words. It's about the mindset behind them. If she's willing to paint a violent movement as peaceful, what kind of decisions will she make as a judge? Now this one really gets me. She wrote that all police officers have internal or external biases, and that some view black males as more dangerous. First off, let's stop lumping all police officers into one group. These men and women put their lives on the line every single day to protect us. Are there bad apples? Sure, but that doesn't mean you smear the entire profession. This kind of rhetoric fuels the anti-police sentiment that's tearing our communities apart. If this is how she truly feels, how can she be trusted to fairly judge cases involving law enforcement? And then there's her 2019 article where she said illegal immigrants deserve a pass because they're poor and hungry. Look, I get it. Nobody wants to see people suffer. But the law is the law. If we start picking and choosing which laws to enforce based on feelings, we no longer have a functioning legal system. This is America, folks. We have a process for immigration, and it needs to be respected. What Judge Cheeks is advocating for here is open borders, plain and simple. Here's where it gets really interesting. Judge Cheeks tries to excuse her radical writings by saying, "Oh, I wrote that as an advocate, not as a judge." So let me get this straight. You're allowed to lie or twist the truth when you're an advocate, but now that you're a judge, we're supposed to just trust you? Sorry, but that doesn't fly with me. As Senator Kennedy said, you can't make this cat walk backwards. If you wrote it, you believed it. Own it. And then we have the second judge, who went on a podcast in 2022 and said, "We the people never included people of color or women." Excuse me? This is the kind of divisive rhetoric that's tearing this country apart. Yes, America isn't perfect, and yes, we've had struggles in our history. But we've come so far. To sit there and act like America is still stuck in 1776 is not only wrong, it's insulting to every American, regardless of race or gender, who has worked to make this country better. And don't even get me started on her comments about quotas. She claims she never advocated for them, but the proof is in her own words. She said women need to demand equal numbers of supervising judges. Look, I'm all for merit-based advancement. If someone is qualified, they should get the job, period. But quotas? That's just discrimination in reverse. It undermines the very integrity of our system. Folks, this is why elections matter. These judges hold incredible power, and we need to make sure they're not bringing radical, activist agendas into our courtrooms. Senator Kennedy did an incredible job exposing the truth here, but it's up to us, the American people, to stay informed and hold our leaders accountable. If you love America and you want to protect our Constitution, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to American Mindset. Let's keep fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. Until next time, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.